Join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Happy New Year, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on Talking Reds, the Nottingham Forest podcast. I don't know why I'm so happy. I probably shouldn't be so happy. But anyway, well, those beautiful kits didn't contain enough magic to help give the boys a much-needed performance at Villa Park today. Forest looked to stop the streak of losses, and fear-mongering on social media is an all-time high, fueled by what we all witnessed, with an even more crucial match coming up away at West Ham next week. The law firm of Deitch, Wone and Stone must reassess their client and put them in a position to avoid that deadly verdict: relegated. I'm Richard Spray. To review this and more, joining me is our silver fox to my right, the wonderful Greg Oram, and the Tricky Trees Rocky Mountain representation, Mark Turner, just below us here. So, Greg, evening for you. What is it, Mark, for us? Midday, almost midday for us. But evening to you, and how are you doing? And general thoughts on that match?
Don't know where to start, really. I mean, first and foremost, I'm very happy that Wolves have just picked up their first win of the season. Literally, as we come on air, they've just beaten West Ham. That's why I'm happy, because it was West Ham they beat. And so that really does mean that the result against Villa has been softened in the respects that West Ham don't reduce the gap to us. Burnley also lost as well. So again, we're back into the habit of looking at those teams in and around us and the ones below us, which is never fun to do. You always want to concentrate on what you're doing. But when you don't perform and when you lose a game of football and you're in the relegation scrap, you do need others to do you a bit of a favour. So Wolves, congratulations to them for getting their first win of the Premier League campaign. And we're very grateful it was against West Ham. On the Villa game itself, well, look, we previewed it the other day, Richard, and we said it was going to be tough. We knew it would be tough. They have been one of the form teams with their winning run. And even though they lost to Arsenal in their last game, this was definitely an opportunity for them to bounce back and play Nottingham Forest, who had lost 3 in a row. And we said that it could well be that they, go snapping into things and they have a lot of the ball, which they did. I said in the preview that I expect Forest to sit back in, and I wanted them to do that, because I felt like we play our best football at the moment when we're hitting teams on the break. Didn't quite expect us to be stuck in and sat in quite as much as that. But it was kind of working, up until the moment they scored just before half-time. We could have gone into the half-time break suggesting and saying, well, look, it's 0-0, and we've not really had anything of the ball. We've had a couple of loose attacks that we might have done better with, but we, at that point, had held Aston Villa at bay, but it wasn't to be. And we'll talk more about the ins and outs of the goals, I'm sure. And then the second half obviously unfolded the way that it did, even though we tried to get back into it. And for a fleeting second, it looked like we would. It wasn't to be. So you come away and you lose 4 games in a row, and it's never a nice stat. Any manager, any team that loses 3, 4 in a row, questions are getting asked left, right, and centre. And I'm sure we'll ask some of them in this next hour and try and give some answers to that. But yeah, not feeling brilliant. I don't like it, obviously, like any Forest fan when we lose. It does affect my mood. But again, slightly lifted with that Wolves victory over West Ham.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, and a 2-0 loss from Burnley as well. So we keep those 2 teams right below us kind of firmly positioned, which is a good thing, obviously, Mark, right? So how are you doing, my friend? And kind of your general thoughts on this match. And did you kind of, like Greg was saying, did you kind of feel a little bit of trepidation just in terms of how the beginning of that match started to it just looked like right off from the off, we're going to bet in and we're going to play deep. So any thoughts on the personnel too, that he put out there as a starting 11?
Yeah, so I didn't have trepidation particularly about how we set up. I had a similar thought process to Greg. It was an expectation more than anything. And let's be perfectly fair here. Aston Villa are better than us individually and collectively. It's why they're second in the league right now. I think they have some really high quality players in their team, almost man for man, better than Forest. I don't think there's too many Forest players who would threaten their starting 11. There's maybe one or two for my money, and I know we're going to get into this. One of them was sat on the bench today and finally made his way onto the field off the back of an injury sub. We'll talk about that in a bit. But it's tough to get up at 5:30 in the morning, that's for sure, and then watch Forest try and grind out a result. And it's funny, not funny, but funny, ironic, in that I was getting ready to drop a note in the WhatsApp group right before halftime. Like, guys, this is great. Into the locker room at 0-0. Now, the first 2 or 3 minutes of the second half are going to be so important. Never mind.
Indeed.
11. I'd like to have seen Callum Hudson-Odoi be available, but honestly, I probably would have started back with two. There was a lot of call for that after the last match. I think we need to do new and different things, and we need to give these players minutes. So I didn't hate seeing him in the starting 11, and obviously Callum Hudson-Odoi evidently wasn't fit to be involved in any way, shape, or form anyway. So I don't really know what else Dyche could have done. Perhaps Luis in for Dominguez. But again, we're always wise after the fact as a fan base, aren't we? Or just fans in general. The solution to every problem is either on the bench or on the treatment table, according to the fan base, right? So, okay, you start with Dominguez over Luis, could have gone the other way. I probably would have gone the other way, but I don't think it would have made much difference to the result.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's a great segue, I think, Greg. I mean, the first half in and of itself was a bit blasé, I guess, from in terms of attacking perspective from Forest End, right? So, we had 66 total passes in the first half. I think it was 22% possession, which, I mean, we've lived with low possession in the past, right? That's been a part of the dynamic from Nuno last season and even prior to that. So it's not something we're totally foreign to. But take us through that kind of passage of play, because we started out very quickly where they had a chance to score a goal, and Victor actually did save that, which was good. But take us through that as we kind of come to the end of that. Mark kind of touched on it, the end of that first half, and just the whole passage of play that led to that goal. What were your thoughts on that? And just in general, how did you see that unfold, and your thoughts on Victor in that moment as well?
Well, look, I mean, you talked about passes and number of passes. What I would say at this point is I was watching the game here in the UK on Sky, and I really like Seb Hutchinson as a commentator, but I didn't care for his commentary today. I just felt it was just a little bit too much going on about how much we haven't had the ball and how many passes Villa have put together and all the rest of it. And, fine, I get we got it, but it kept going on. And Andy Hinchcliffe is one of the worst co-commentators, was joining in the fun. Because the thing that was annoying me was possession, and we learned this last season, means pretty much F all if you're not going to do something with it. And what we saw in that first half was Villa had all the ball, but did F all with it, because that shot on John Victor's goal within the first 2 minutes came as a result of a lucky deflection off of Nico's foot, goes across to Watkins. He makes the save with his leg. Brilliant. Done his job in that moment. It's instantaneous reflex goalkeeping. Gets a leg up. It doesn't matter what you save it with, you save the ball. And he did his job. So you think, okay, we got off with one there. Like we were against Liverpool, we sat in quite deep and we held our shape. It was 4-5-1. We were trying to get the ball forward to Jesus, who wasn't being successful at all with his hold-up play today. I think he lost so many duels, it was ridiculous. He was either giving away a foul, handballing it, or just losing the duel. Constant had his number. So that wasn't a really good outlet for us. And that was what we needed to do, is get the ball up to Jesus, have him hold it, and then start to launch some attacks. And now we couldn't do that, apart from sporadically. And we were wasteful on a corner. So by the time we got to the point you've just referenced, with literally 45 minutes being up and only 1 minute of added time being displayed by the fourth official, I'm thinking in very much the same way what Mark was just saying. I was about to drop a similar message into the WhatsApp group saying, well, they've had all the ball, but they've done F4 with it, and we should be pretty happy, something to build on, etc. You all know what I'm getting at.
Is that great minds think alike, or is that full seldom differ there?
Yeah, well, let's go with the great minds.
Could be either one, probably.
So look, there's mistakes that are being made in that move. Elliot Anderson's ball watching. rather than stay in the shape and stay in front of Milenkovic, as soon as the ball's released, he tries to launch forward towards Yuri Tielemans, try and close the ball down, and doesn't get anywhere near it. He then in turn manages to turn with the ball, thread it through to Morgan Rogers, who's in that space that Elliott has more or less just left. His pass into Watkins. There's still an opportunity here for Milenkovic to close quickly. Milenkovic, who I love and everyone knows I love, doesn't do so. And Watkins takes a touch, gets out of his feet, and he does catch it. He does catch that ball really well. He's got some pace in it, but the goalkeeper should be saving that all day long and twice on Sundays, every day of the week. Why he chose to try and save it with his left hand, I don't know. That has crept into goalkeeping over the last 10, 15, 20 years or so, where goalkeepers choose to go with what I would always suggest would be the other arm. The arm he should have gone with was his right arm. Had he done that, he was closer to the ball. The angle of the ball in relation to his arm going up could have seen just a touch, would have sent that over the bar. Fingertips would possibly have sent that over the bar. He's coming at it with his left hand, and therefore the hand is on a different angle, and it does. He flaps his fingers onto it, and it goes in. So he got it all wrong. I know that Watkins did catch it, like I say, but yeah, I'm looking at the goalkeeper. I'm also looking at our frailty and our errors in allowing that shot to take place. I think they were like 30 odd seconds into that 1 minute of added time. Really disappointing. Really, really disappointing to concede a goal when you have followed the game plan, not necessarily a game plan that we all are in love with. We know that last season we did sit in and we did hit teams on the break, but we had Alanga who was a big part of that, and we were able to get out more. At the moment, or in this game in particular, we were riding our luck in terms of allowing him to have so much ball, and they were trying to poke balls through the middle. They were doing some intricate 1-2s in our penalty box. We were managing to get a foot in and clear it, and so on. So it wasn't pretty. And I know that a lot of fans are saying, well, look, this type of football is pretty dire. Has Sean Dyche reverted to type? I don't know. What I do know is that we do have good players that can play football. And so I don't want to see too much of us playing that style of football when I know we've got players that can do more with the football. But I got it. I understood it. We're at Villa Park. They're a really good team. Let's get to halftime at 0-0. It wasn't to be. Really disappointing. Goalkeeper at fault.
For sure.
You mentioned we also had Chris Wood.
Mm.
We've been complimenting Jesus at the yin yang for his hold-up play there so far this season. It's tough, right, being that one-man striker and holding Premier League defenses on your back. Chris Wood does that also, but what Chris Wood provides that Jesus to this point really hasn't is goal threat, going the other way, being able to run off the shoulder of the defender, be able to attack those spaces from balls in the box from Callum Hudson-Odoi and Alanga. And we don't see that from Jesus as well. So it's kind of a double whammy in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say too, I mean, in a match like, because the statistically, it was almost an inverse of the Everton match, right? As it relates to possession and everything else. So I like you was thinking, I was getting ready to type in like, wow, could we do an inverse of Everton moment? And literally as I'm typing that into the group, then it happens, right? They score that first goal. And we all know that is such a critical part for how we play. I mean, we did come back against Villa, I think at home, or was it away? I'm trying to remember which match. I think it was at home. Yeah. So we had, that was about the only time though, that we had come back from, I think being at least one goal down or more. And so, it was just such an unfortunate turn of events. And it always seems to happen at the worst possible moments, right? In injury time, leading into that second half. But before we get into the second half real quick, I just want to say hi to a couple of people in the comments. Brucey, as ever, our faithful buddy and friend who's in the comments here from Austin, Texas, from Dallas, Texas. It's Ross in Austin. Another extra time goal. The West Ham game is huge. Good news is my new TV survived barely. Well, congratulations on the new TV. I'm so happy for you, buddy, that you got the new TV. Unfortunately, that had to be the way. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well done. Yep. So anyway, yeah, grateful to have Brucey and Kahlo. Looks like Kahlo 50-34. We got back in the match until the calamity, and that's definitely a good word for it. Say hi to Jordan Smith as well. Get that bald fraud out of my club. Ooh, that's some fighting words right there, some spicy words. And then we've got Brandon Doan in here as well. We need to beat West Ham on Tuesday, which I think we all pretty much assumed that's what needed to happen regardless, right? What happened today. So, all right, well, let's kind of like shift gears a little bit. So Mark, we get into the second half, right? We come out. Was there any kind of adjustments you thought? I mean, you talked about Luis potentially wanting him to be the kind of the pairing with Elliot Anderson in the midfield. Did you see a need for him to come on as a possible adjustments, or any other adjustments that you might think of? And what about those first couple of minutes that really worried you, I think, in terms of when they got their goal, and kind of walk us through that whole sort of spell of play as well?
Yeah. So the Luis question, again, it's a tough one to answer because it's always easy to be wise after the fact.
Sure.
One thing I did notice that Dominguez was doing was getting in good positions out wide and up high. I mean, he was a pretty good outlet, which is strange given the position he's played in. And we've kind of bemoaned the fact he's been played wide in other matches and saying, you know what, is he really the best choice for that? And yet where he found the ball and most joy today was out wide, ironically enough, and kind of linking those from the middle third to the attacking third. So, but there's very little end product from him in that regard. And I'm not being, I hate isolating players and picking on individuals, but that's just not his game. And I'd say I love Ryan Yates. I'd say the same of Yatesy, right? That's not his A game in that situation. So I think you could roll Luis on at halftime. I don't know that necessarily would have changed a great deal. I'm going to come back to my opening comment. I think they're just a better team than us all the way around, and so I think what we needed to do was exactly the thing that Greg referred to that we were trying to do, which is batten down the hatches and get us through to halftime. Like if we could get on in at 0-0, I think there was an opportunity for us to counter and to snatch something, probably no more than a point. So for the second goal to come as quickly as it did was really disappointing. Obviously a mistake by Bakwa, holding on to the ball a little too long, which I'm going to forgive him for. I just am. I'm sure I'm going to get blazed in the comments for this.
No,
but
I agree.
the guys had 10 minutes of football or whatever the heck it is. Like, it's so hard to get up to the speed of the Premier League, the fastest, most aggressive professional football league in the world. And every now and then you're going to be slightly off it. And it only takes you to be off it for a second or two to get that ball taken off your toe and an opportunity to develop. So frustrating for Bakwa, who I thought, blew hot and cold. I thought there were some moments there that were positive throughout the game, and also some moments for concern. But I don't think you can really make a definitive call on him with as little evidence as we have right now. I think he still deserves to be in and among the mix. I think he still has something to contribute. So, yeah, but disappointing to concede that goal so early in the second half, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, because if you think about the way we were setting up and the way that we approached that match from the get-go, right, it felt like very much early on, as Greg kind of talked about, you've talked about this, Mark, we were ready to kind of just take a point. We were ready to sit in and just try to find a way to get a point, maybe luck, get some luck there and find ourselves into a counter goal, which we'll talk about in a second, because we did get one of those. But it definitely felt that way, which is a difficult thing for someone like Bakwa to get involved in, right? Because he has played wing back, he can drop deeper, and he can play a little bit defending. He can do some defending, but really it's the dynamism that he offers, right? It's his adeptness on the ball, all of those things that he has that you kind of want to see, right? That's not really the way the game was going to be played, or at least it wasn't initially. So, but yeah, I appreciate those comments. Yeah. And as always, guys, we just want to appreciate the time that you're taking today to kind of come on with us, but we also encourage you guys to like and subscribe. As always, we're on all social media platforms. We certainly are on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts as well. So please check us out there. If you do, leave us a 5-star review. We always appreciate that. And any feedback you guys want to give us is always welcome, right, Greg? Positive or negative, whatever it is, we like it. We appreciate it. Mark's a podcast veteran. He knows that's always good to get good feedback. But Greg, I do want to switch gears to, we're kind of hitting the beginning of the first half and appreciate what Mark shared there. What about just that passage of play and that whole section of play where we did get that goal and you did see Bakwa kind of come through with an assist? Kind of talk about what you thought in that moment when Morgan kind of broke free, and then just your general feeling right after that, leading up to the point where I wanted you to kind of touch on next, which is what happened shortly thereafter with Victor. Can you just kind of go through that whole section of play?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly on their second goal, the John McGinn goal. I mentioned then, I agree completely on Backway. He's come into a team, had no football, a loose pass or a loose mistake. Forgiving him for that. There was still plenty to do after that for Villa to score as well. I wanted Milenkovic to be better on his challenge on McGinn. Maybe McGinn scores still, but at least put in a better challenge. And even before it came out to Backway, John Victor flapping it across that went in, and how he managed to parry it away on a very weird angle. It was almost like the whole comedy of errors was starting there. So, for us to then go 2-0 down was, here we go. At that point, I thought this could end up 4-5. I was really thinking that the heads would go. So it was pleasing to see us start to get a little bit more of a foothold in the game. Sometimes when teams go 2-0 up, that affects them as well. Maybe their juices aren't flowing quite as much as they were. They maybe feel a little bit more comfortable. We've got our 2-goal lead. We can just take our foot off the gas. And obviously I'm talking to Villa about Villa now. So maybe that allows for us to just get a little bit closer to them on the second balls, maybe win a few more second balls in the midfield area. And that's kind of what really happened. So when the ball breaks to Backway, who, as we've touched on, was I don't want to say at fault, but part of the reason why we scored the second goal with his looseness. He's the reason why we scored our goal, Stag, because his through ball into that space was a very good ball. It was very well weighted. It landed in an area for Morgan to run on, clearly onside. And so when he's broken through, he carried it and he carried it into the box. And I said out loud, I said, he's just got to shoot. Don't try and look up and don't try and square it. Don't try and do anything. You just got to shoot. So when he did have a go on,
I bet what you were saying was he's got to whack it. He's got to blast this.
He's got to whack it. He's got to, exactly. But he didn't do that. It was like a deft Morgan-esque type effort that I thought, oh fuck, it's floating wide, because that's what I thought. But then for it to nestle in, it was actually a very good finish. Beautiful. It was a very good goal. And when they always say, don't they, guys? 2-0 is a very dangerous scoreline in football, because it can the team that's got the 2 goals can do what I've just said, perhaps, and it only takes that team to get a goal back for them to be fired up, and that's what happened. Forest had just a little bit. I'm not saying we got carried away and we were pelting them, but it became a contest again, and I thought, you never know here. We might go on and do something that none of us thought we would be doing, which would be to grab a second goal and hold out for that point. And so I was feeling pretty optimistic. He tried to get some subs on, but they got delayed because we'd scored. Aina back, great to see Ola Aina back in the side. He didn't look the Ola Aina that we know and love, but I'm not expecting him to. But he's got to get back into the team at some point and get some minutes under his belt. And so he came through it, and that was the most important thing. So he goes off. Savona, happy for him to come on. Douglas Luiz coming on for Dominguez, I thought was a substitution. I don't know if that needed to happen, because I don't think he did anything when he came on. It was a bit of a nothing substitution. And then we see Callum Mwendo coming on, which I'll keep my powder dry on that just for the moment, because we were trying to get ourselves back into this game. So when the ball breaks down on the edge of the Villa area or thereabouts, and Yuri Tielemans picks the ball up, and he's a very good player. What happened next? I just don't have the words for. I'm going to try and articulate it, and everyone that's listening to this will have seen it, so they're probably thinking, "No, we know, Greg. We know. You don't have to go through it." But when it lands, I don't know what John Victor is thinking. Maybe it's the trajectory of the ball, and he thinks it's got more power on it than it had, was going to come through to him, and him coming out of his goal was necessary so he could boot it up the pitch. What happened, of course, was that it didn't have anywhere near that kind of weight on it, and it lands plumb into the centre of our midfield, into John McGinn's feet. And by the time you've made that split decision as a goalkeeper, whether it's coming out like that or anything else that's in your box, you live and die by those split decisions. And you get punished. Goalkeepers, invariably, when they make a mistake, it's a goal, and therefore it's worse. But for him to come out like that, John McGinn, composed, he was a player that I referenced in the pre-match when I said he's a player I like. Every team in the Premier League would love to have a John McGinn in their side because he is a good old-fashioned British centre midfielder and a good player. And he put it away brilliantly. And then John Victor cried like all Brazilians seem to cry very, very easily. And then, of course, then he feigned injury because there was fuck all wrong with him. He did a Carlos Miguel because Carlos Miguel did the same at Exeter when he faffed up. He feigned injury. He just wanted the ground to swallow him. And he wanted to get off that pitch quicker than you could say Carlos Miguel. And so that's what happened. And actually, that was one of the positives we take out of this game. The whole John Victor experiment is now over. Why Matt Sells wasn't brought back into the goal is the question we have to ask, guys. And Sean Dyche has to take responsibility for that. Because when you've got a keeper like Matt Sells, who, okay, hasn't been at the level he was last season, but we know what he can do, and we know that he can get us out of a spot of trouble, and we know he can make great saves. He would have saved that first shot. I'm certain of that from Ollie Watkins. Matt Sells would have saved that, I believe. And he wouldn't have come flying out. I mean, John Victor did the same thing against Utrecht. He went on a mission and got away with it. So the writing was on the wall. And so I don't know why Matt Sells didn't come back in. If he's fit, you play him. And I said on here, is it because they don't see Matt Sells as long-term goalkeeper? Is it because they see Matt Sells leaving the club? You know, is it because Dyche wanted to kind of put his own imprint on this team now and he wants John Victor to be his goalkeeper? I don't know. But it hasn't worked and it cost us that goal. And then, of course, the whole game just dies there and then. It peters out. And I don't think we'll see John Victor play for Forest again.
All right.
You asked for it.
Definitive. There it was. No, I appreciate all the breakdown there. Before we kind of move forward, I do want to give a little bit of shout out to our sponsor, the Cheese Trader. So we're going to take a quick break and see a little ad for the Cheese Trader.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
There he is, that beautiful man, that talented man that is Stu Freestone, and we are very grateful for him, aren't we, Greg? He's a great guy. So please support him as a Forest fan and as a business owner there in York. Absolutely incredibly talented human being, great musician, great poet, great cheese proprietor. So we really appreciate him and hope he's having a good new year so far. Well, maybe not because of this result, but he's definitely been busy, hasn't he? So yeah, he's been really busy over this holiday season. So which is a great thing, obviously, when you're in your business to be busy. So appreciate him enormously. And he's got a book coming out too, which we'll continue to promote coming up. I think March 30th is when he has his spoken word with music and other things, that event that's coming up there in York. And so we'll put more information out in the near future on that. All right, Mark.
I like it when you're hosting a little bit now, Richard, because it allows me to have my rants again. I can
like
have my
rants.
Moments. I remember saying there's more hosting coming up from Richard in 2026 and more rants from Greg. Stand by, everybody. I'll start getting the trolls in the comments again. I can't wait.
Yeah, at least you won't be talking about Sangari this time. That seemed to be the thing that pushed everybody's buttons, right?
So, come back.
Yeah,
Sangari, please come back.
Yeah. I know exactly. Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity, I think, for us to have more rants, because I mean, I don't know how the rest of the season's going to go, but based off of what's happened to date, I think there's going to be more rants in the future, right, Mark? So, Mark, let's talk about this interesting sort of conclusion to the match. Clearly, once that third goal went in, it just sucked the life out of everything. So I have a couple of questions for you. Firstly, did it just blow your mind that Callum Wendo's sitting on the bench when everything is being touted from Florian Plettenberg, who's obviously a fairly well-known guy on social media and journalist on social media and pretty credible, that he's going to go to Eintracht Frankfurt on loan? So firstly, was it weird to see him on the bench, given that's the fact? And was it even more strange? And what was the point, to your point, Greg, about Dyche making odd decisions? Of all the matches we've been playing, of all the times where we've anticipated Callum Wendo coming on and we see Taiwo instead, just give us your thoughts on just what is happening with Dyche's sort of thought process behind bringing Callum Wendo in because he puts him at risk, right? I mean, if he gets injured, that could nix that loan, which isn't such a bad thing for us because maybe it takes some of the pressure off us in terms of what we got to do in the window. But what are your thoughts on that? It was a bit strange, right?
I mean, talk about pitching me a softball. I have no idea what to do with that. I mean, you want me to get in the head of Sean Dyche. One thing I will say about Sangare very quickly is we all know, right, the Forest haven't even secured a single point since he's been gone.
Good point. That's a great point. Yes.
Fulham, City, Everton, Villa, 4 straight losses since Sangare.
Physical teams where you need a physical presence in the middle, right? Yeah.
And I'm not his biggest fan either, but there's no doubt he was getting into a rich vein of form right before he went to AFCON. And clearly we're missing him. So interesting. And I just want to say as well about the John Victor goal, the 3rd goal. That was heartbreaking. I think I'm right in saying this. I'm going from memory here. This isn't a stat I have written down, but I don't think Villa have failed to take a point in any game in Villa Park this season where they've scored first. So for them to be 2-0 up, you sort of think the game is done and dusted, right? So when Morgan pops up with that beautiful goal, you're like, wow, maybe, could happen. New Year's miracle. So it was so devastating for John Victor to make the decision he did. And watching the goal from behind McGinn, to Greg's point, I don't know what John Victor was thinking. It really didn't look like the through ball was played with enough strength for the right decision ever to be to continue to advance upfield. He was already on the edge of his box. So I think he was in panic mode. Like, what do I do here? What do I do here? Mate, you protect the thing with the net hanging off it behind you. Right?
Especially when they're like covering defenders.
That's your one job.
in his eye line.
Other thing. It's like if you're going to have a headless moment, do it in a one-on-one. Oh my God, defender's got flat-footed. Strikers through on goal. I'm going to go out and maybe I'll get a red card, but I'm going to take one for the team. There was no reason in that situation for him to make that decision. And so more so than everything else, the positioning of his feet on the first goal, the fact he's a windshield wiper when it comes to like just about every shot he tries to stop. All of it, like set it all aside for the decision-making. First and foremost, his decision-making is horrendous. And that's why I would always pick Matt Sal's.
Steady on,
you might pick Angus Gunn now.
Steady on, Mr. Freud. Careful now. You'll get Andrew Coe very excited. Because you might get that wish. You know, you never know. I expect Angus Gunn to play against Wrexham now. There we go.
I was about to say, because we got some fixtures we're going to talk about, so that may be the case.
Getting back into Dyche's head, I don't know, Richard. I mean, that was a bizarre selection. And obviously, we've been bemoaning the fact that Taiwo continues to come off the bench. And then right as it looks like Callum Wendo's out the door, RIP Jean-Claude. There was a strange decision. But I'll tell you the thing that's bothering me with this Forest team from game to game since Dyche has come in, with the exception of Tottenham, and only really with the exception of spells during the Tottenham game, is that there are no defined patterns, there's no pace, and we're pedestrian, right? And if you think any of that's inaccurate, don't do this because it's horrible to do this to yourself. But if you want, I guess, go back and watch the Everton game, right?
Both of them.
It was don't go back and watch it. But anyway, it was the template of what I'm talking about. You know, when you're well coached as a team, certain patterns develop within the team, right? If you're the left back and you receive the ball in this third of the field, you know that your go-to next step is distributing the ball here, right? And here could be wherever the coach has told you to put it, right? Out to the left wing, inside to the central midfielder, switching it cross-field, right? To the right fullback, and we know it's herring up the wing. There are patterns that develop, ways of play. And at this point, we should be starting to see those patterns. And we're clearly not. Add to that how slow the build-up in our play is, and it kills us. It's why, you know, we keep hearing this narrative of, Forest struggle when they go up against teams that sit in deep. Yeah, but other teams have a resolution for that. It's you move the ball more quickly, right? You hold on to the ball, you sit back, you draw them out, and then when you draw them out and create space, you move the ball quickly to make use of the space that you have then cultivated. We're not doing that either. Everything's so incredibly pedestrian. And it was always going to be a hard ask against Villa today, but I want people just to kind of broaden their scope a little bit and think about the body of work that we've seen from Sean Dyche and his coaches so far. It's not terrible. We could be in a worse predicament, and we've had some high moments for sure, but I'm not really seeing much in the way of progress here, and it's starting to concern me.
Well, and here's another stat that I was looking at. So I've been keeping track of points per game averages and just cumulative points overall with all these teams in that relative relegation zone, right? So we've now gone under. Now, granted, we could blame a lot of this on Ange. We could blame it a lot on the decision making to bring Ange in to begin with, which we all didn't agree with, but had to endure. So we're now below 1 point per game. Because even if you had 1 point per game, or at least a little bit over 1 point per game, you could at least make the case that we're going to, if we stick to that pattern, we're still going to probably survive, right? We're still may end up with 17th, and maybe we get the dream that is Greg Oram's dream, which is to, and I apologize, my mini Aussie is barking in the background there. Get that dream that is win Europa, end up 17th, right? So, which is not impossible, clearly. But yeah, now Dyche is drifted now to just around 1.08 points on average per game. So he's really below his normal average. I believe his normal average as a career, just over his career, is 1.3. So you're right, Mark. I mean, there's just a lot to be worried about. Thinking about that, I just want to kind of to transition, and I want to get your thoughts, Mark, real quick on this. So January is going to be a really busy month, as we know, just from a fixture standpoint. So here are the forthcoming fixtures, right? So we got West Ham next week. We've got Wrexham again, at Wrexham for the FA Cup, home against Arsenal, away at Braga for Europa, away at Brentford, and then home against Ferencváros. So we, from that just sector, and I know the points we're worried about. Obviously, I mean, we are worried about points in Europa as well, because we don't want to have to go through those qualifying rounds or that playoffs structure. But Mark, from your perspective, when you think about what you've just seen and just some of the recent performances, as you just touched on, the inability to create sort of consistent patterns of play that you can at least hang your hat on and say, hey, if we can deploy that, or if we make this adjustment, we think we can get something out of a given match, whichever match that is. How many points do you think we get out of that, especially considering we're going to have to balance a squad, right? And we've got limited resources, as we know right now, at least in the striker area. So what are your thoughts in terms of what you think is going to happen in those fixtures? And I would go ahead.
No, sorry. Yeah. Well, obviously in the fixtures you just gave, there are only 2 league games. So in terms of points, I would take 3. I take a victory against West Ham and a defeat to Brentford. Both of those outcomes, I think, are definitely Arsenal likely. And in the case of beating West Ham, eminently doable. Do that, and that's 3 points across 2 games, which is better than the 1 point per game we're seeing from Sean Dyche right now. So that would be, I'm not going to say an improvement, but that would be better than the trend right now. Beat West Ham, defeat against Brentford. I don't care about the FA Cup. I'm just really glad that Forest have been drawn against Wrexham, because now I get to watch them on TV next year, right? In the Wrexham TV show that we enjoy over here, Richard. So that'll be great, as long as they don't get hammered. But to your point, I love the FA Cup. I love to see us go deep. The reality is we don't have this squad, nor do we have the mentality right now. I think it's too fragile for us to be competing really effectively across 3 tournaments, which we have to be. We have to be competing in the Premier League to maintain our status there. And I, like Greg, I want us to go deep into Europe. And to your point, Richard, don't want us to be in the additional, have the additional games, because the additional qualifying requirement. So beat West Ham, perform well in Europe. I can't even say the words out loud, because I can't say lose and Forest in the same sentence. I don't want them to. I think I just did a moment ago with Brentford, but have a really good game against Wrexham, and que sera, sera. Let's leave it at that. I think that would be a decent outcome for the month of January.
Excellent. Well, I want to get your thought. Thank you, Mark. I want to get your thoughts too on that, Greg, but I do have to bring up something real quick. We said we probably weren't going to touch on this, but as it's being touted on X right now, it's being called El Sacico next week, because we know what just happened with Wolves. They've just got their first victory, and who was it against? Ironically, against their former manager, Nuno Espirito Santo, our former manager as well. And then we got that coming up away next week. So, Greg, what are just your preliminary thoughts on that? And do you see any credibility to the idea that this could be a make or break? I would say it's probably, in my opinion, it probably is more of a breaking point for Nuno than it is a breaking point for Dyche. I mean, how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, the media, once they start getting their teeth into anything like this, they're like a rabid dog. They won't let it go. And that is what drives and fuels it, because the owners then are just hearing it all the time. The fans are getting worked up. The West Ham fans have been getting worked up with their ownership for a long time. I think they're in a worse state than we are by far. I know that our ownership have made some questionable decisions. Edu coming in as one of them, I think. The whole Nuno affair, the hiring of Ange, everyone knows about that. So I do think that Nuno's in much more peril than Sean Dyche. I think if we lose against West Ham, I don't think that's the end. I just can't contemplate Forest going to a fourth manager of the season. There has been some tongue-in-cheekness on social media about Nuno getting sacked and then him replacing Sean Dyche, which would just be bonkers and should never, ever happen in a million years. We've already had a stupid set of circumstances. We don't need a random weird twist in it like that. That would be the wrong thing to do. But, you know, a point would be a good point for us. They need to win. I suppose some might say we both need to really, really win, but they probably need to win more than us, really. On the run of games, we have to beat West Ham. I think we have to beat Wrexham as well. I think that when you lose to a lower league opposition, we saw it with the Swansea game. It was also the way it happened, which didn't help for Ange being 2-0 up. But Wrexham are the Hollywood hype, and I don't want to be the story of the third round when you lose away at Wrexham, because it will be a story. I think we need to keep ourselves under the radar a little bit. I'd take a draw at Wrexham and play them back at the City Ground. I really would. I know that's adding another fixture into the mix, which some might say is not a good thing. But actually, after Wrexham, it isn't Brentford, it's Arsenal. It's Arsenal who we play at the City Ground. That's a free hit. It has to be seen as a free hit at the moment. Then it's the Braga game, which we have to win in my eyes, because I still want us to front up. And I can't contemplate going to the G-Tech and losing. That just doesn't come into it for me. That's on the 25th of January, on a Sunday, 2:00 kickoff. So that's following the Braga game. So that's another match after being away in Europe. We come back and then we go away in the Premier League. So there's that context to add to it as well. So all in all, 3 points at West Ham for me is an absolute must. A point at Brentford would be thank you very much at this point. Anything against Arsenal was the bonus. Wrexham winning a win against Wrexham in the FA Cup, so we don't have to have more shit chucked at Forest. And I think we've got enough in our team to make sure that Lewis O'Brien doesn't get one up on us in that game. Yeah, and again, a win in Braga. Let's gate crash that top 8, because I don't want to. It's just one game, isn't it? I think you play one game. It's not a home and away thing. It's just one game, but it's still an extra game. That would be my dream scenario to take us out of January, and then we go into. Well, in fact, we play Ferencvaros on the 29th of January at home, which again has to be a win for me.
But that's exactly right. That's a dream scenario, Greg. I mean, that it's unlikely, and I apologise for skipping over Arsenal. I think I did that subconsciously because
I assumed a 0.
Yeah, right. I apologise. I missed that one, Richard.
They're currently losing at home away at Bournemouth. I've just glanced over my shoulder. Oh, wow. Bournemouth, the one up at home to Arsenal. There you go. So,
stranger things have happened. I mean, that's the dream scenario. How likely do you think that is? I mean, you basically painted best case scenario in every competition.
No, but you know what? Going to West Ham and beating West Ham is absolutely not out the question, right?
Right.
Beating lower league opposition Wrexham in the FA Cup we're the favourites. We should be there. They should be the underdogs. We're not. Arsenal have already said is the free hit. Braga, okay. I don't really know too much about them, but I'm suggesting we can go there and get 3 points. A draw, fine. And again, going to Brentford, I'd suggest that we go into that and can get a point. I mean, so I don't even know if that's the dream scenario. I think the dream scenario is that we win every game. The dream, apart from Arsenal, the dream scenario is that we beat Wrexham, beat Braga, beat Brentford, beat West Ham, and beat Ferencvaros. That's not going to happen, especially with the run we've been on. The kind of the filtered version has to include 3 points at West Ham. If we don't win any other game, but we beat West Ham, then I'll take that.
Agreed.
Yeah, because that falls into the 6-pointer category, right? Because of where they are right now behind us. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Mark. We're going to jump in.
No, just I agree. No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think one thing that was very positive from today that will stand us in good stead, assuming cross fingers, touch wood, all of that everyone stays fit for the month of January, is the re-establishing now of our proper back five.
Yeah.
With Sales coming in, all joking aside about Angus Gunn.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Nico has been a real high point this season. And I think people have been speculating about, has Milenkovic and have Murillo been as good this year as they were in the previous year? And, we've seen some cracks there in the dam and all. Yeah, there has been a little bit of that. But you also, defense more than any other place on the field, you really are a brotherhood. It is a unit, right? You're bound together. You die together. You throw your body in front of the ball. If you can't get the block in, your mate behind you does. Like, it is. I mean, that five back there, that's one cohesive group. It's a subset within the team. And we haven't had that all season long. And last year, it was indomitable. So to have that group back together again, please, Ola, stay fit. And now Murillo's fit too, which is fantastic. And back in his groove. I think that's a huge positive moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm with you on, I can't change anything that you guys have stated in relation to the fixtures other than the fact that, I'm hoping that this won't be a situation where, West Ham is trying to win this match for their manager because they want to keep him there or something to that effect, right? And they come out on fire and then really put the pressure on right away and really make it difficult for us, especially if they get that first goal like we've talked about. So hopefully that won't be the case. I'm gonna, I don't have any actual. Oh, there is wood over here. Okay, I'm gonna knock on this wood over here in my chair, and hope that that's the case and we get those 3 points. To your point, Greg, I think if we can somehow secure a point at either Brentford or Arsenal, that would be incredible. But getting through those European matches unscathed, no injuries, all of that. I think the tricky part is, and this is the one thing I want to switch to just in the last few minutes before we get your guys' final thoughts is, Greg, I want to, looking at the situation with Callum Owendo, if he does go to Eintracht Frankfurt, which that seems to be likely, just the nature of where that spine is, right? Because is there any case now to be made? I think I know we're going to go with this, that we need to target a goalkeeper in any way, shape, or form. Because we have do we feel comfortable that Sells can kind of just begin interchange? Do we think Angus Gunn can come in and spell at Wrexham? Those kinds of things. Is there any case to be made for the possibility of bringing a goalkeeper in as part of this transfer window? Because we know there's some other positions, and I kind of want Mark to touch on those as well. But what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I've mentioned a few times that the whole Sells thing was a bit iffy for me, and I felt that this would be his last season at Forest as the number one. Sometimes when managers come into clubs, they want to put their stamp on it. This is Sean Dyche's first window, but was he already doing that by the moment that Sells picks up a so-called groin injury of some kind? It didn't keep him out for long, that he puts John Victor in goal, who hasn't dazzled. He wasn't great against Swansea, albeit that was before Dyche, but he should have looked at the footage. And he hasn't been spectacular in
Cali, apparently.
Well, when we played away at, I think it was Sturm Graz, he had two saves to make that were both identical parries into the pathway. One was thankfully offside because they put it in the back of the net, and the other one got cleared. So it just looked a bit suspect. So I don't know if he doesn't fancy Sells. Look, it's Forest, and we've said we want to have a quiet window because it shows that everyone's settled, the club's in a good place. But that clearly isn't the case at the moment. So I'm expecting there to be more movement than anyone has imagined there would be. Clearly, one of those is a striker, which I can chip on in a minute. That has to happen.
Yeah.
Goalkeeper-wise, I just don't know. I'd be very happy for Matt Sells to stay in goal. I've got enough trust in Matt Sells to be the goalkeeper for the rest of the season, and Angus Gunn to come into the number 2 slot, be on the bench. But there's his World Cup ambitions to think about. He's already come out and said he thought he'd be playing more. And I was that was early in the season thinking, what, you thought you'd be playing more in the Premier League ahead of the Golden Glove winner from last season? Are you sure? And we went out of the Carabao Cup. So whether he wants to stick around, I don't know. So it depends. If he's agitating for a move, then we'll need to bring another goalkeeper in of a third choice nature. I don't know what's going to happen with John Victor. We didn't see Carlos Miguel again. after his feigning injury at Exeter, and he went back to Brazil. And I think the same will happen with John Victor. So it might be that we have him in a holding pattern until the end of the season, with Sales now occupying the shirt. I guess the question is what happens if he gets injured again. If John Victor's back and fit, then obviously you have to play him. If Angus Gunn is there, we play him. So yeah, the goalkeeper department has got questions hanging over it, only because of the way Dyche has managed it in the last 5 games.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, thank you, Greg. Yeah, because I was thinking about, there's always the caveat, right? And we'll probably talk about this in relation to strikers as well, specifically Strand Larson, who I think has been the most highly, he's been the one that's touted that we are looking at the most at this stage. I mean, it's all conjecture, right? Until it is
a good header earlier, could have scored for Wolves, should have scored.
But because I was thinking, like, is Trafford from, Man City potentially on the table, because he's a good young goalkeeper. He's featured for England a little bit, at least as a reserve for England. So, Mark, what are you thinking about striker? Because do we need to? We've now been told by Sean Dyche that it's months, not weeks, with Woody. So, do you think there's a possibility that he's going to try to go after someone like Strand Larson, or maybe I'm thinking of Luca, for example, in the Serie A, who's another big tall striker who's in his mid-20s. Do you think that's a good possibility? If so, do you think with the registration issues that will surface in relation to getting them into the Europa League squad, do you think maybe we start to see a transition where Jesus plays more? I mean, he certainly scored more outside of the Premier League. Maybe move him into that role and then move somebody else in to be the featured striker in our Premier League matches.
Yeah, there's no doubt, obviously, in this transfer window that the number 9 is the priority. Whoever we land on, it's absolutely critical. Back to my earlier comments regarding Chris Wood and what he was able to provide going both ways, which we don't see with Jesus. I don't know why anyone's panicking about the goalkeeper situation. I mean, Wayne Hennessy, dust off your gloves, mate. I actually would like to see a lone goalkeeper be brought in January. I don't know who that would be, but I think it would be good to have that cover. We don't know what the situation is with John Victor, but I'd be happy not to see him play for Forest again, regardless. So, but you do need the additional cover. In terms of a striker, and I'm forgetting the lad's name, and I apologise if he's already moved to another team. There was a lot of speculation last year about the lad from Brighton. Is it Evan
Ferguson? He's at Roma.
Evan
Roma,
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's what a terrible come down from Brighton.
Sorry. Yeah.
The eternal city, one of the most amazing places on the planet. Okay, well, yeah, I guess he's off the table then. So I don't know what the options are. Quite frankly, I don't generally deal in big, tall, lanky strikers that we pump the ball up to. That's not generally my wheelhouse. I keep giving Jean-Claude Darcheville his props. That's definitely the more of the striker I look for, which is why I'd be sad to see Callum Mwendo go out, quite frankly. I don't think he's been given a fair shake. But regardless of what shape or size or ability the striker has, a striker is needed. And it's somebody who can get us 10 goals, the balance of this season, at the very minimum. And I'm sure in January, those strikers are not going to be a dime a dozen. Teams are going to want to hold on to them. I'm surprised that Wolves aren't, well, maybe they are fighting hard to keep hold of Strand Larson. He's had obviously a really poor season for them by his standards, but are they really in a position where they can afford to offload him and whatever goals he may yet yield this season? So, but I do hope that's our coaching team's priority. I imagine it must be.
Yeah, it certainly seems like Strand Larson has fallen out of favor, right, Greg? Go ahead, mate.
I was going to say, well, it might be that they feel they can get more for him now than at the end of the season, because there's teams that need it now and that they might better push it a bit more in terms of value, because they're not going to get anything like what Newcastle offered for him in the summer, because his goal return this season has been so low. But they might be kind of looking at the likes of West Ham and Forest that need that striker and say, well, look, obviously you need him now. So if you want him now, it's going to be 40 million, let's say, or 45 million. Whereas if they keep on, because we think we're going down, they're probably resigned to the fact they're going to go down. So in the summer, that kind of ship has sailed a little bit on the likes of us wanting him at that value. So therefore, they might only get 30 million for him at best at the end of the season, because we would perhaps turn our attention elsewhere, as others might do. They've just got relegated. He's only scored 3 goals the season, let's say. So therefore, his value's dropped, and therefore, it might be just this is the time to sell him because it's the best value we can get for him. I mentioned him, as I've said in here a few times in the summer, as a player I liked. There's a player there, he can score goals. You know, I don't ever really kind of carry too much weight on, well, he hasn't been scoring goals here. Sometimes a change is as good as a rest. You know, a change of team, change of management, a change of environment, and all of a sudden, you know, you look at Rasmus Højlund, for example, hasn't torn it up at Napoli, but he's been scoring some goals there. Couldn't get a kick in at Man United. Same kind of thing. You know, it could well be that. I mean, Chris Wood's the perfect example for that as well. Obviously, you know, he was always been a good goal scorer, but you know, he was very good for us. So yeah, Strand Larsen would definitely be a player that I would want at Forest if we can get him. But I think we're going to have our pants pulled down for him, and this is why the whole Calimundo thing is happening. I think because it's a loan with it says an option to buy, but I would imagine that there's a condition to buy, or maybe, you know, something like that for £27 million, I think. So I think we're kind of in the same kind of bracket of what we paid for him, and that goes towards the Strand Larsen deal. And then, of course, then we're going to be selling Anderson in the summer, and we're probably going to be selling Murillo as well. So, you know, we have to hope that it's not too much of an asset strip. We have to stay in the Premier League, and we have to get a striker.
Beyond Strand Larsen, though, and the conversation around him exclusively, you guys, I'd be curious to know, more broadly speaking, recognizing that we need goals, we need at least a striker, perhaps a couple in this window to ensure our survival. My concern is who's making the decision. Again, set Strand Larsen aside for a moment, and you know how he's come onto everyone's radar, but who's making the decision? Is it Dyche and his coaches? Is it Edu? Is it Marinaki? I mean, and what confidence do we have that we're going to end up with the right striker or strikers?
Well, I mean, based off the recruitment and some of the things that have been stated, I think online, there's some questions around that. But if you think about the situation with Calimundo and the comments that have been made, whether that's Dyche just parroting back something maybe that he feels he's getting from above him, I don't know. But I would say he references training ground, he references analytics, he references what they've seen. So my guess would be, at least in relation to Calimundo, it feels like that's his call. And if it is someone like Strand Larsen, then it is the kind of profile. And if we are hearing rumors about bigger strikers like Luca from the Serie A, I'm trying to remember where he plays right now, but he's 6'7". So, but if you watch him, his movement's really actually pretty good for a guy that big. Doesn't look lanky, doesn't look cumbersome when he runs around. So, you know, those kinds of profiles of players, if there's any credence to it, like what Greg, you and I looked at profiles of center backs couple years ago as well, and there seemed to be a clear and obvious focal point there in terms of the size profile that we saw. So maybe that's something to say that Sean Dyche wants that. He wants that kind of player coming in. So you're going to jump in, Greg. Sorry.
No, I was going to say that I'm hoping that the hierarchy at Forest have learned their lesson from the whole recruitment fiasco in the summer of who's buying who for who, because clearly that's what made Nuno throw his toys out of his pram. The whole situation was an odd thing for us to experience. But then when Sean Dyche was brought in, there was that very clear messaging that went out in that very long tweet about Sean Dyche is well renowned for his ability to set pieces at both ends of this and that and all that kind of stuff. So it's almost like they were making a admission that we're going to let the manager manage. Maybe I've read too much between the lines. So therefore, when we come to this window, some people are saying, well, why are we giving Dyche the window? We're giving Dyche the window because he's going to be the manager for the rest of the season, I think. Whether he's the manager after the summer, who knows? The Forest hierarchy won't care about that. All they'll care about now is staying in the Premier League. So therefore, let's give the manager that's in the hot seat the tools that he wants to keep us in the Premier League. And if we make a change in the summer, we get rid of him, and if we have to change the players again, we've done it before, we'll do it again. We'll move players in and out like we've always done, and we'll move them on and make profit. The sole focus has to be now that the management team have faith in the players that they want, and that's going to see Taiwo go. It's going to see Willy Bolly go, seeing Calimundo go. McAtee might go on loan somewhere. You might see a switch in one of the goalkeepers as well, as we've touched on. We might even see another fullback coming in. We might even see a deal struck where Zinchenko gets returned. I don't think it will happen, but does Douglas Luiz get returned? I don't know if that will or won't happen. Probably not. But I'm expecting there to be enough of a change around that we can say, right, there's been a proper shuffle going on. The person coming in before the round closes in the Europa, the striker, we know they can't play against Braga and Ferencváros. So to your point, Richard, it makes sense that the striker, let's say Strand Larsen will probably play Prem, and Igor Jesus then will switch for those last two Europa games. Obviously, we can make changes to that squad. And I think if you're selling players that are in the squad as well, if you don't make any changes whatsoever, you can make 3 changes. I think if you're selling a certain amount of players that were in the original squad, you can replace them with new signings. The ins and outs of it are there on the UEFA website before someone starts criticising my butchering of explaining it. But it's there. So things and tweaks can be done. But the most important thing in all of this is that our Premier League place is retained. Because I saw someone on Twitter earlier and say, maybe the best thing is to go down and regroup. But I think that's the worst suggestion in the world.
We've already done that once. We don't want that. You
don't go down and regroup. If you go down, you don't get back up again. You don't need to go down to
regroup.
You can regroup from 17th, for fuck's sake. You don't go down because you don't get back up for 23 years.
Right.
That's not what's needed, because it's just nonsensical thinking. We have to stay in the Premier League because this is where it happens. I think everyone's look, no one likes us losing games, but it's a far more enjoyable life as a Forest fan in the Premier League than it is in the Championship.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And by the way, it's, I mean, everything you said is right on. I think there's a good possibility that we probably wouldn't have Dyche in that offseason as well, based off of how things were going, at least to date. And that mean maybe the regroup and the reset is just a new manager and actually having a preseason. So hopefully that'll
that's huge. What you just said there, Richard, you're so right. The fact is we had the worst, the best preseason under Nuno. He gave us our best season last year.
Absolutely.
This season was the worst preseason with all the shit, and look where we are now.
Absolutely. Well, we've kind of talked this through. I appreciate everything that's been shared to date. We'll definitely have some things coming up, I think, Greg, right, with regards to the transfer window and really looking at that, focusing in on that in certain player profiles and so on and so forth, which Lorenzo Luca plays for Napoli, by the way. I just looked that up. So doing well. I think he's doing well for Napoli right now, so I wouldn't be upset about that one. But again, appreciate the time that everyone's taken to join us today on Talking Reds. Definitely going to be back soon with our preview of the next match, and then we'll for West Ham, and then we'll obviously the subsequent review. We've also got some things coming up too regards to the stadium. Got some great people to come on and talk through that. But before then, we'll definitely hit the window a little bit more detail and look at some specific players and profiles and different metrics that come with that and what we hope to see from them. But we'll go ahead and turn time over for some final thoughts. Mark, I'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Greg, and then I'll give a final thought.
I tell you what, Richard, I would love it. I would love it if Nuno got fired on Tuesday.
Could happen
at 10 p.m.
I would love Forest to stuff West Ham and for Nuno to get fired. He left such a bitter taste in my mouth, the way that he put himself first in that whole debacle earlier in the season. Regardless of the circumstances, I will forgive. I will never forget. And that would be a fantastic start to well, we're already in January, aren't we? A kickstart to January after the false start today. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. What do you think, Greg? Final thoughts.
I was at West Ham, third game of the season, when we lost 3-0 and didn't see it coming because the Brentford game was fantastic. We'd gone away and got a point at Palace, which, looking back now, was a bloody good point, by the way. And then so we lose 3-0 at home, and it was Nuno's last game. And, we never quite knew what was, well, we didn't definitely know what was to come with Ange and everything else. But that game was the start, really, of the season taking a significant nosedive. So I'm pinning my colours to Tuesday night, the reverse fixture at West Ham with Nuno now their manager, being the pivotal moment where we go up and we win 3-0, and we're going to do a proper preview of the game probably on Monday, I think. But that's I'm hoping I'm going to be there. I should be there. I'm waiting for my ticket to come through still. So yeah, to be at that match and hopefully kind of go full circle and Ola Aina back in and 3-0 to Forest, that's going to be the moment, Forest fans, when we go, okay, fine, we've come out of the slump, we've opened up what would then be a 7-point gap on West Ham, which feels a lot better than 4 points, but getting the win's really important. So yeah, I'm disappointed with today, but very optimistic that Tuesday is going to be a lot better.
Absolutely. Can only take one result, right? It can just take that one moment where we get that shift and that transition, that momentum back in our favor. So I hope you're right, Greg. I hope that's the case. I do want to give a quick shout out to Chris Aylmer, who's his birthday today. Yeah, so happy birthday to Chris Aylmer, the wonderful man that he is, that wonderful Irishman from Forest all over and features on Forest Focus. And he's just a great guy and a great Forest fan. So appreciate him enormously and hope he's had a good birthday, even under the circumstances. I messaged him earlier and he wasn't quite pleased at the way his birthday was unfolding because of that result, but hopefully he's feeling a little bit better now, had a few drinks in him and he's enjoying and being festive on his birthday. So thank you everyone again for joining us on Talking Reds, all those in the comments, anyone else who has liked and subscribed and is subscribing to the channel. We definitely appreciate all of you and definitely appreciate the opportunity to communicate, connect, and engage people in the Forest community. And it's been a real blessing to do that. So until next time, come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.